Hi, my name is Brad, and I'm captain of Puffin. My wife and I have lived aboard now for about 10 months, and I'm often asked by relatives, friends, folks that live in regular houses, what's it like living on a tiny little boat? Where do you put everything? What's the square footage? So, in order to compare apples to apples, I thought I'd create this video exploring just how much living space Puffin has in the way of square footage. If you're looking for a boat, or if you're designing a boat, or if you're just considering the lifestyle, hopefully this video will give you some indication of how much square footage we really use, how much we really need. To get a baseline, let's start by measuring the length on deck and the beam of the boat. Multiply those two together. I think Puffin uses about 70% of that space, and that gives me 690 square feet. Of course, I've got the main living deck, and then I've got above deck out in the open. Puffin has a nice large aft cabin. It runs for about 13 feet from the windows at the stern to the front of the cabin. It's 13 feet across at the widest point, about 11 feet across right in here. The nice thing about a cabin this size for an aft cabin is that I could put a queen size, full normal queen size bed in here and still have it walk around. It was important to me and my wife, because we didn't want to have to crawl over each other to get in and out of the bed. The other nice thing about this cabin is the light coming in. It was very important to me that it was not claustrophobic. My wife and I are both slightly claustrophobic, and it would have been uncomfortable if we were in a smaller, tinier cabin or less well lit cabin. Puffin has a nice big salon, measures about 10 feet from front to back and about 9 feet side to side without getting into the navigation areas or the galley. My wife and I like this size of salon for a couple reasons. One is that the seating here, we can put 8 people successfully around this table and have a dinner without tripping over each other. But also, this makes a nice space to throw out your computers and, when you're reading a book or a newspaper. And this is where we eat our lunch or our dinner. So we like this size. So what about guest accommodations? You may plan to have folk visit you. Might have a couple help you move the boat. They might be on board for a week, maybe 2 weeks. So I think it's best if they had their own private space and possibly their own private head. That's what Sherry and I were looking for when we bought Puffin, and you should be considering that the needs of guests when you choose a boat. Puffin has 3 cabins forward of the mast. The front one, or the bow cabin, is about 9 foot wide, 9 foot deep, although it does pinch at the bow. The starboard cabin is the smallest of the 2 side cabins, and it's 4.5 foot wide, a little over 6 foot long. The biggest of the cabins is the port cabin. We call it the guest cabin, and it's a little over 6 foot wide, a little over 6 feet long. Each of the cabins has a full-sized bunk in it. By full size, I mean it's 6'3" long. If you look at the design on a lot of different boats, carry a measuring tape when you go look at the boat that you're interested in. See if those bunks will handle a full-size adult. You don't want to have to start shuffling people around based on their size. The other thing is the heads are nice size. They're not aircraft cabin heads. They're big ones. There's showers in each of them, and you can move around in them without an issue. Each of the cabins has its own closet. We were interested in the comfort of any guests that we had on board, and we wanted them to have their privacy in their own space. We're here in Puffin's engine room. Puffin has a pretty extensive engine room, but I'm not sure I'd call it living space. Granted, I come in here every day. There's a walk-in engine room door and a stand-up platform that the camera's on, and a stand-up workbench here. Back behind me, got a scuba compressor, water compressor, heater, gen set sits over here. So there's a lot of space down in here, and I do store a lot of tools down in here. So I guess the best analogy is a garage. I'm not sure I'd call it living space, though. The only reason I'd bring people into here is to show it off. It is kind of a big space. And it's nice as you're planning a boat, that you have working space around your engines and your machinery, your compressors, etc. You can get in and work on things. That's critical. So as you're looking at a boat, or looking at your next boat, or designing a boat, look for room around the engine, look for room around the machinery. You're going to need it. Hey up there! Storage space is important on a boat. It increases the square footage up where you're walking around when you can store stuff down under the floorboards. Puffin is a deep draft boat. I'm standing on top of the concrete in the keel. And yes, I do store stuff down here. And I can't hardly reach the deck above me. So, figure adding a few square foot for what I can tuck down here and get out of the way from up top. So the front deck here measures some 25 feet from the top of the cabin, or the front of the cabin, up to the bow. It's approximately 13 feet across, but it is usable space. We put a tarp over here, and we have a nice little shaded area in the summer, and we watch dolphins go by, and as you can see, it's a beautiful view out here in Charleston, but we do use this space. And there's plenty of room up here. Now the ropes you see tied off here and here are simply to tie the ropes away from the mast so they don't bang in the wind and keep me awake at night. The space here up on top of the, this would be above the salon. Got cushions for it, and this is where you'd lay out to do your sunbathing if you so choose. Not sure I'd call it living space. It is exposed to the weather, but it is somewhere that you can walk when you're out cruising. It's a nice place to sit. You want to stay below the boom, so if it swings over, you don't get smacked. But the cabin top, the actual boat's about the full beam here, so 1510. It's about 8 foot deep. The back deck, or the aft deck here, is a little bit crowded. You got the table and grill and sail, mizzen sail. But yes, you do walk around here when you're underway. Of course, you got to tend the sail. But you can walk, and of course you can walk right on top of the skylight of the cabin below. But I'm not sure you'd call this living space, but it's space we do use while underway. Measures same as the aft cabin below, probably 11 feet across right in here, and about 15 feet from the back of the cockpit to the stern of the boat. And here we are in the cockpit. I'm going to count this living space. We entertain up here quite often. You got the folding table that we can easily sit 8 around here, and you walk through here daily. You're a little bit out of the weather, although it is open in the back. You can put a tarp out there if you like. But the beam of the boat here is the full beam, so it's 1510. The inside of the cockpit is about 10 feet. Add another 4 feet here to go up to the cabin windows. Now I've got the main hatch here closed, but as you can see, this is all usable space, easy to walk around. I'm going to count this as living space. So if we take the areas in the main living deck and the areas above deck, we subtract out what we're not using on a daily basis, we add them all up, I get about 1,190 square feet, or just shy of 1,200 square feet. So now that you've watched the video and you're thinking about your own boat, designing a boat, or maybe just thinking about the lifestyle and what you'd have to give up to move on a little boat, make sure to measure the boat you're looking at quite carefully. Take a look at the amount of storage space it has, because that's important, because it gets the items that you store off your main deck, out of your living space. It basically gives you back some of your living space. Sherry and I are sitting on a boat that is about equivalent to a 1,200 square foot cottage with a garage, with enough storage space to call it a garage. The difference is, my house will take me to Europe or the Caribbean. Will yours?